This tucked and twiddled video is about how to add embellishment to the edge of a tucked up panel so that you could use it for quilts, you could use it for cushion covers, you could use it for small bags, or indeed you could use it on your garments. I'm going to show you how to satin stitch a line of colour down the edge of your tucks as we have on the panel in front of me, or indeed how you can add a yarn to the edge of your tucks for a dramatically different effect. I'm now going to show you how to run a thin line of satin stitch down the edge of your tuck. So prepare your tucked up panel as per the first video on making tucks. Thread your machine up top and bottom with the same thread. All kinds of variegated threads can be used, indeed the rayon threads work particularly well. King Tut is great because you get a change of colour every 1/4 of an inch. The Madeiras do some wonderful different colours, as indeed do many of the other makes. So thread up top and bottom with whatever colour thread you happen to fancy. You'll then need to put on the correct foot for the machine. I've got on my open-toed embroidery foot, or sometimes referred to as the satin stitch foot. You don't want to have the regular flat-bottomed foot because this will jam up on the raised satin stitch. So the foot you choose has got to have a cutaway bit at the back here. Here is a satin stitch foot for a variety of machines, but notice there's a cutaway section at the back. You might find a perspex one slightly easier because you can see through the foot. Now some perspex feet come with a bar across the middle. It is possible to take it out, but hey, come on, you could buy one. There is an open-toed perspex foot, and all of these feet have one thing in common. They have a cutaway bit at the back here, which will allow the satin stitch to pass cleanly underneath the presser foot. So I've got my satin stitch or open toe on. I've made my panel of tucks. I'm going to start off by sitting just on the work. Now notice I've got the edge of the fabric fractionally inside on the left hand side of the presser foot. So this leg of the presser foot is holding the fabric still. The needle, when I start to sew, is going to go into air on the right hand side and just clip into the very edge of the fabric on the left hand side. So into air and into the edge of the fabric. I've set my machine for satin stitch or zigzag. I've got it at the widest one for my machine, which is on number 5. You might have it on number 7 on your machine, but if your machine goes up to 9 on your stitch width, I'd probably stop at around 7. I've got the length of the stitch at round about 0.5, but this is a changeable feast because it will depend on the thread you've got in, the fabric you're working on, and the size of needle. So experiment a bit first. If it jams up and clogs up, you've got the stitch length too close, you've gone down too low. If the stitching is spread apart, you've got the stitch length too long, so take it down a little bit. It is a bit of experimentation. So I'm starting off with the needle in the fabric, in a bit from the edge of material. I'm going to go into the air and off, so into the edge of the fabric and off. And you want to run that machine really fast. So all your hands will be doing will be just guiding it through. And just keep on going, keep your foot down, keep on going, making sure you keep the fabric off center. Can you see the center hole here? The fabric is to the left of the center. If you go too far in, then you simply roll the edge of the fabric over. So don't think, silly woman, why doesn't she use a narrow zigzag? Because if you use a narrow zigzag, you'll never hit the edge of the fabric. Believe you me, this method works. So foot flat down, let your hands guide the fabric through, keep on going till you get to the very end. When you get to the very end, just sew off the end of the work. So let me get there. And by keeping it running nice and fast, it does keep the machine stitched very neat and tidy. It's not going to go anywhere, so don't be frightened. Give it a whirl. And there you can see we've got a neat line of colour down the edge of my tuck. Now I'm going to show you how to add a yarn to the edge of your tuck. And I'm just going to go back in the opposite direction. So open the fabric out and reveal the tuck. There is the edge of my fabric. I'm going to keep the same presser foot on. Now, when it comes to yarn, you could use any yarn you like. I have most wonderful tangle collection of multicolored wools, chenilles. You could use stranded cotton. There's no reason why you can't double up on the stranded cotton and use 2 lots of stranded cotton. You could use sort of tapestry wool. You could use a multicolored wool. I think I'll use this one to begin with. So find the end of the wool, which I'm absolutely useless at, so I tend to, and you can all go, oh, just cut another end. The big problem with adding a yarn down the edge is trying to keep it beside the edge, and this is where the good old thread saver comes into play again. You will find all this information about tucks and indeed thread savers in Tucks, Textures and Pleats. It goes through both the embellishing of the tuck and indeed the thread saver, as well as much more. So the thread saver is scrap of fabric. Take the yarn and lay the yarn onto the fabric. I've got the machine set for the same really wide zigzag, but I have changed the stitch length now. I've now gone for about 3 on the stitch length. I'm simply going to zigzag the yarn onto that bit of fabric. Just it acts like an extra pair of hands. Take the material, and again we're having the fabric in the same way, just peeping underneath the left-hand edge of the presser foot. Now the idea is to keep the yarn slightly to the left of the work. So the needle is going to go into the fabric and over the yarn, in and off. Just untangle that from the back there. Into the fabric, over the yarn, in, off, in, off. And if you keep it slightly taut and at an angle, the machine sort of gathers it to the edge of the tuck. So in, off, into the edge of the fabric. And you can take this very much slower because you're watching the edge of the fabric underneath the presser foot and making sure the needle clips just the bit of the fabric and over the edge. I'll come to choice of thread in just a moment. When you get to the end, it pays to simply sew off the work onto another thread saver or donkey, call it what you will. I think these days I prefer the name donkey. Stop on the donkey's back and snip behind the presser foot. And that's going to give you a wonderful line of colour running down the edge of your tuck. Now I deliberately used thread that matches my fabric because you'll get stripes. Had I used a darker colour thread and wobbled a bit, you'd have seen the wobble. So we can do satin stitch, we can do a yarn. When you've embellished your fabric, you could have a go at playing with it. So let's have a look and see how else we can twist the tucks rather than having them all go in one direction. Let's see what else we can do. I have in front of me now a panel of tucks that I've embellished with a variegated thread using the satin stitch down the edge of the tuck. And I've pressed them all in one direction. I happen to have an even number or pairs of tucks. I've got the regular presser foot on now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist one tuck towards the other, and this is going to make that honeycomb effect I showed you at the beginning of the video. Underneath the presser foot, set your stitch length for regular stitch length. Fold tuck number 1 over tuck number 2, so they're hugging each other. When you get to the next one, tuck number 3 over tuck number 4, etc. 5 over 6, 8 over 9, 7 over 8, never could count, and 9 over 10. And when you get to the end, if you can possibly remember, sew off the work onto your thread saver or donkey, call it what you will. I'm just going to use this scrap that I happen to have found knocking around by the sewing machine. Cut the back of the presser foot. Right. What, or how rather, it makes it much easier to explain is we have pairs of tucks or couples of tucks. Common couple is mummy and daddy. So row 1, mummy and daddy have turned towards each other and basically kissed each other. Row 2, when I sew back in the opposite direction, I'm going to change that donkey, really don't like it. It's a horrible looking donkey. Let's give us a nice looking piece of fabric. There we go. So I have all my mummies and daddies kissing. Row 2. Now the spacing between the tucks could be what you like. I'm going to go about 1.5 inches. Sew across the work, and daddy is going away. And mummy is going to kiss the man next door. And again, mummy is going to kiss the man next door. Again, And again, it happens. And then finally to the other side, off that and onto another donkey. Let's find another donkey. You only ever need 2 donkeys, or thread savers, call them what you will. Snip. So we've now got divorce. But remember, you want to sew backwards and forwards. So my 3rd row, I'm going to sew off my donkey's back, and fortunately the sun shines, and so Daddy is going to go back to kissing Mummy again. All the way down the row. Mummy and Daddy get together, and that's basically how you can make the honeycomb effect. Backwards and forwards across the work, flipping the tucks forwards and backwards, and this makes this wonderful honeycomb effect. The spacing between the tucks can be what you like. If you were worried about doing it straight, well, you could draw a little line and sew across it. So remember, the work is going to go up one way and back the other, and as you go, the tucks flex inwards and outwards, giving you this wonderful honeycomb effect. So we can do the honeycomb effect, Mummy and Daddy kissing each other. You could even consider doing 2 going one way, 2 going the other way. Why not? You could play with the design. You could play with the yarn. How about having something like double eyelash down the edge, which when you've played with it would give you this sort of effect. You could even, if you wanted to, add a twinkly thread down the edge and then put something else in the centre. There's a little bit of ribbon laid down there. Or you could do some form of a fancy pattern. You need to do the fancy pattern before you close up the tucks. So as you can see, by simply adding an edge to the tuck and then manipulating it, and whether you have them all going one way or whether you have them in the honeycomb effect, it really does add a lot of pizzazz to your work. And that's it. You can add threads, you can use up all those cottons that you've bought and never had the time to use up. Why not add them down the edge of your tucks? You can have your tucks going this way, you can have them that way, you can have them together in groups, you can have them as a honeycomb effect. This is playtime for all. Enjoy!